What's going on? A to Z Sports. Sam Phelan here alongside Zach Bingham. Got a great show for you guys here today to kick off the week. Kind of an interesting topic this morning, talking about, some rumblings. The owners, NFL owners, got some stuff cooking up, and I don't know, caught me by surprise when I first read it. If it happens, it changes the course of the league forever and has big impact on the Titans, the future of quarterback Will Levis. So, going to have a fun little conversation today to talk about the future of the NFL and the contract status of one Will Levis in the AFC South. So, got a great show. Zach, welcome in. It's been a minute since you and I have done a show here together. So, excited for it, and tell the fine folks what to do.
I know, Sam. It has been a minute. So the best part is we can hop right back into things and get things going. I'm excited about our conversation. I'm excited about this show. We got a lot to talk about on this Monday as we continue to maneuver through June and July leading up to training camp. So we got you locked in there. We are locked in on 3 different platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. That is the best way to view our show on all 3 of those platforms. And we will tweet out segment by segment, link by link, our YouTube links on our Twitter handle at A to Z Sports. So go to X/Twitter right there at ATOZ Sports. It's a great follow. We've got great coverage going in, as I mentioned, training camp and all the things in between. So another easy way to do that is turn live notifications on for our YouTube channel. So we've got you locked in right there on YouTube at A to Z Sports Nashville. You can search there on YouTube. And it's the easiest way to get notified. You can get notified in the mornings for our morning show and also prime time with Buck Rising. So a lot there on YouTube. Subscribe, like this video, and hit the live alert button if you are on YouTube and Facebook. What's going on, Facebookers? Bottom left corner of your screen, share now to public. Sharing is caring, and caring is sharing, as we say on this show. So share the show around. We need to pop up in your Facebook friends' news feed, and how that works is you guys share the show. So let's get this party started on a Monday morning, talking about a possible change. I don't know where you are on this topic, where I am. I know where I'm on this topic. I don't know where the chat's on this topic, but we can dive in and we'll find out sooner rather than later.
All right, let's do it officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports, powered as always by the BetMGM app. Zach, you've got the nice hat on this morning. I'm loving the BetMGM merch. I'm Sam Phelan. He is Zach Bingham, and this is A to Z Sports, Nashville's on-demand sports talk network, going live on weekday mornings at 8 Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show tweeted out segment by segment on the Twitter X timeline. You can also check out the TikTok, Instagram, and Threads for more engaging Titans content. Got to thank our sponsors this morning. They make it happen for us and help out all of you, like Wilson County Hyundai. Make Wilson County Hyundai a part of your new car buying process in Lebanon or at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Get better with Farm Bureau Health Plans. Better rates, better coverage, better service. Learn more about a plan for you at fbhp.com/ATOZ. And the Bone and Joint Institute, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. boneandjointtn.org to schedule an appointment. Now, Zach, so you see it down at the bottom on the show graphic here this morning. The topic today is the change that could potentially be coming, that the owners are discussing coming, that I'm not sure I ever saw coming, to the NFL building a quarterback salary cap. Is that right? A quarterback salary cap? Yes, that is right. We've got this coming here from, so let me make sure I pull it up here. We get it right. But it was this discussion. I actually think I got to load it up before we talk about it here. But Zach, it is the idea that the NFL owners, on the heels of Trevor Lawrence getting a big extension, are now discussing the idea of, do we just build a salary cap only in place for NFL QBs so that quarterbacks can only get paid a certain amount of money? Kind of a wild concept, but reality in 2024, have contracts gotten out of hand?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, contracts have absolutely got out of hand. And, if you think about, and I always date it back to Sam Bradford and Cam Newton. This goes back a long, long way. Do you remember when Sam Bradford got $50 million? I mean, he won the Heisman Trophy.
And that seems like How minuscule
Right?
does that seem now?
Yeah, and that was overall. Now they're getting $50 million per year, which is pretty wild. But you look at. I always remember Sam Bradford getting $50 million as the number one overall pick for the St. Louis Rams at the time, and how that kind of changed. That changed the dynamic of first-round quarterbacks. Now that's rookie contracts, right? So rookie contracts needed to be reset because owners were getting upset. Quarterbacks is the most important position in team sport. I don't think there's an argument for there. If there is, please, speak it. But it is the most important position. And so they were paying and trying to find their franchise quarterback, and they were spending, AKA wasting a lot of money on said quarterbacks in the first round. Now, if you hit, they're worth it. But now if you hit, and there's a lot of really good quarterbacks, especially in the AFC, as we've seen, and they're getting paid. You have Patrick Mahomes that signs a $500 million 10-year deal, and you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, that's wild. And then the Chiefs are sitting there suddenly like, ha, 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 ha. We signed him early and we don't have to mess with him. And now, the industry and inflation and all of the other stuff has changed. So I look at that and you say, that poses a problem. It's good for the Chiefs and whoever signs their quarterback that is a franchise quarterback long-term. And those are hard to find. But we know Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, those type of quarterbacks, you feel comfortable paying them that type of money because they've proven. The hard part, and we'll get into more of this, is the Daniel Joneses of the world, the Blake Bortles of the world, the Matt Flynn's of the world, the Trevor Lawrences of the world, right?
I mean, even the this second tier of guys that it ends up driving the decision of teams. When you look at, the idea of moving on from a guy, I think teams move on from quarterbacks more frequently now than they did in the past, because there's an understanding that if you keep him, you have to pay him, and you have to pay him like a top tier quarterback. And so I think teams are more likely to cycle through those second tier guys that you mentioned, because they're viewed as, well, you're going to get paid like a top 5 guy. And if you're not a top 5 guy needing to get paid like a top 5 guy, maybe it's worth just trying our hat in the draft again. And that is the ultimate dilemma that causes this. Tom Pelissero on the Rich Eisen show says the following, Zach. There has certainly been discussion within the league among certain owners about even the idea of a quarterback cap, that at some point you don't want quarterback numbers to go over a certain percentage of your salary cap. He adds that to his knowledge, it hasn't gained traction yet, but we do know that these discussions are now taking place, that this is a legitimate conversation happening around the league. And I think with every sports league, we see things that get discussed and you think, that'll never happen. No way. That's too big of a change to actually happen, until it does. And he quotes, the Daniel Jones contract as well. The top 11 contracts in the NFL belong to quarterbacks. The top 16 contracts in average annual salary, all quarterbacks. The top 12 contracts in terms of practical guaranteed money, quarterbacks. And you look at somebody like Daniel Jones, who's never even been to a Pro Bowl and has a career touchdown interception ratio of 60-42, and he's making over $40 million in average annual salary. That, I think, is where NFL owners start to take problem with the deals, is when there's guys that are not elite that are end up getting paid elite, that make you say, wait a minute, what's going on here? And how can we change this to not have this be the norm?
Whose fault is that?
I think that's the question. That's part of the question that we got to talk about here. I mean, whose fault is it that Daniel Jones is getting paid? Not Daniel Jones. And
I think here's the hard part. It's between Daniel Jones, the franchise, and the market, right? All of those are factors into that. And we all believe it's the same thing. Blake Bortles, I think, and you could argue a little bit of Ryan Tannehill, right? Ryan Tannehill forced the Titans, at least the Titans took the bait in that sense, is that he took them to an AFC championship game, and they were kind of forced to sign him. They didn't go with Tom Brady. They didn't do that. They said, look, we've seen enough from Ryan Tannehill, and they signed a 4-year, $100 million contract. that actually seems pretty good at this rate. How much here before we get to our question? I do have a question for you, Sam.
Yeah.
How much is the impact of inflation as a whole to these numbers? So industry will always move, right?
Yeah.
You know, you had Roger Staubach got paid less than Troy Aikman, and Dak Prescott gets paid more than Troy Aikman, and the next Cowboys quarterback is going to get paid, right? So like, but where we are now, and I'm not trying to get into political conversation in an election year, but I am asking, the inflation has been bad overall for what our country is feeling, right? Whether it's bread, eggs, and milk or quarterback play, the cost of living's high and going up. So how much is that impacted into these conversations and what we're talking about today in the quarterback market?
You know, I do think it's a factor. And, you know, it is kind of as the league develops and continues to become the biggest professional sports league in the United States. And, you know, we don't have to tell the fans how expensive it is to go to an NFL game or to watch an NFL game. And, you know, things seemingly get more expensive. Like you can't even buy Sunday ticket now. Some people can't even afford the package to watch their favorite team on Sundays because things around the NFL have gotten more and more expensive. And as that's been the case, the reality is that it still gets paid and that there's still fans that go to the games. I saw a graphic the other day breaking down the average cost to go to an NFL game at different markets in the league. And there's examples of teams like the Raiders where the average ticket is up near $1,000 just to get into the stadium. And yet they sell the tickets every which week. So there's more money coming in to the NFL now than there ever has been. It's gotten more expensive to be an NFL fan and be an active NFL fan. But as the league gains more revenue and gains more money, I think the price tags of these quarterbacks are going to continue to go up with it because the marketing of an NFL quarterback, especially the good ones that you mentioned, is, you know, astronomical. You can't even quantify the impact of a Patrick Mahomes and the financial benefits that the Kansas City Chiefs have for having that guy. Everybody's looking for that guy. And so I think as inflation in society, as just general over time, you know, the league gains more money, quarterback contracts are going to go up. And this is ultimately what makes this a really interesting topic to me is where do we draw the line, or where do owners draw the line of saying enough is enough? I think we've started to hit this sort of kind of just understanding of, oh, well, yeah, it's going to go up. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is going to get paid more than Daniel Jones, who's going to get paid more than the last guy. And the next guy is going to get more than Trevor Lawrence. And that's just what it is because quarterback contracts increase. And when do we hit the point where the owners say, no, we're not increasing anymore. We're not doing $70 million a year for one guy. You know, that's a funny line, but I think we're starting to get close to it.
Well, and I think that brings up our question that we're going to ask today, which is, you know, the concept of a separate NFL quarterback salary cap. Does that make sense? So let's just go to the chat and ask the chat, are you for or against a separate NFL salary cap for quarterbacks? So this is something that was kind of thrown out there at the end of last week. This would reset a lot of different things. So are you for or against a separate NFL salary cap for quarterbacks? I put that right there in the chat. I'm curious to hear what the chat has to say. But first, I will tell everybody about the Farm Bureau health insurance. Now, that is where you need to go. You talk about reliability. You know, maybe Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones aren't reliable. Farm Bureau Health Plans plan on them for health, dental, and vision. 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. Over 75 years they've been in business. So you can guarantee that they will be reliable for you and your family. It's not just individually. If you individually need a health plan, I would suggest go to Farm Bureau Health Plans. We talked about the cost of living and that increasing. Well, you got to make sure that your health is secure, or it doesn't really matter. Money doesn't matter. Make sure that you have the right plan for you. That's health, dental, and vision, 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. They can help you and your family. All you've got to do is go through, get a health assessment. Once you get a health assessment, you get a quote, which is valuable. Once you get a quote, then you make a decision. It's all up to you. That's health, dental, and vision. FarmBureauHealthPlans.com. That's FBHP.com/ATOZ.
Today's show is powered by BetMGM. They're the king of sportsbooks, and with the bonus code ATOZ Sports, you can get up to $1,500 back in the form of a bonus bet if your first bet doesn't win. That means whatever your first wager amount is, if your bet loses, it goes back into your account in the form of a bonus bet for a second chance to win big. Got Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight, and I don't usually watch hockey, especially, teams that I don't have any relation to. But Edmonton and Florida, after a 3-0 potential choke from the Florida Panthers, Connor McDavid playing for a spot on the hockey Mount Rushmore, some would say. I'm tuning in tonight, and I'm probably going to bet it with BetMGM to get a little skin in the game. So use BetMGM, use the bonus code ATOZ Sports with the king of sportsbooks to do your next sports betting experience. It's the best way to do sports betting.
Well, we've asked this question. The chat, look, I'm a little surprised. I think we're going to have a good discussion coming up here, Sam.
Yeah.
Because we asked the question, are you for or against a separate NFL salary cap for quarterbacks? I'm going to take you to the chat, and then, Sam, I'm going to ask you this same question. I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Let's start off with the chat, though. Maven says 4. Mario is in for it. 4 from Cost 66. Lane says 4. John says 4. Scott says 4. So we have a influx early on that, as Big Ten Jeff says, it spreads the money around. Then here we come with the against. Steven doesn't like it. Rooney doesn't like it. King VC does not like it. He's against. Nick is against. Billy Jones is against. Caps is against. Now, Jill Morris is for it, and so is Dr. David Fan. Titans Kyle says against. I'm all for it from Guy Mann. I'm for it from IR. They're already rich anyway. Look, yes, I mean, we all know that they are rich. Now, look, they're for our entertainment. They put their minds and bodies on the line. We love the sport, all the popularity, what it represents, all of that. So, like, you got to pay to play in a business, and they're paying quite a bit of money. Let's see. WEX or Triple X says, I'm for it. Need to have money to build the rest of the team. Jonathan says against. I think they should be like coaches, no cap. And so the coaches are tough, though, because those aren't fully disclosed. We really never knew how much Mike Vrabel actually made from the Tennessee Titans.
And they don't count against the cap. Coaches do not count against your salary cap figure, I don't believe, right?
No, they don't.
So, I mean, it's like, it's weird. Not only is there no cap, but at least quarterback contracts, you have to equate into the salary cap and making sure that you are, have money to spend on the rest of your team. Whereas a coach, you could hypothetically do whatever you want. Like, you could be the Raiders and give John Gruden $100 million and then go, oops, like 2 years later and
just pay him off.
Yeah, it's like a problem.
So
am I for? Yeah, against.
I want to ask you because look, we've got 4. I think this is pretty even. Like Brock says against, Mario says 4. We've got some more 4s coming in here on the chat. Sam, where do you reside on this? Are you for or against the idea of quarterbacks having a separate salary cap in the NFL? Look, there's a lot of structure that we don't know. This is kind of the start of why we said this is the latest NFL rumor, but I think some of it makes sense. Some of it could be impactful, maybe in a negative way. So are you for or against?
Look, at the end of the day, I actually understand why a lot of Titans fans might be for this here. They're sitting there being like, oh, Will Levis might be up for a new deal in like 2 years. Let's get that new salary cap structure in place quickly before our quarterback comes up. But no, Zach, I'm pretty firmly against this. And not that I hate the idea as a whole. My thinking just comes back to the question you asked earlier, which is like, whose fault is it? And my answer to that question is the owners. I blame the owners for letting it get to this point in general. And I think, any sports league has some checks and balances because of the free market. And, you can shoot yourself in the foot by trying to beat the market. The same way that the Chiefs made a great deal for Patrick Mahomes and paid him earlier than everybody else and locked him up and have that guy that's going to make their franchise a ton of money for the next 10 years and they got it done and don't have to worry about it. There are teams that are looking for their Patrick Mahomes and they make mistakes in the process of doing it. And if you don't like it and you don't want to pay a quarterback a couple $100 million, don't pay your quarterback a couple $100 million and just draft a new one and reset the contract on a rookie deal. That is the game that you play as an owner. It is the game that you play as a front office, is trying to make sure if you're paying a guy that you've got the right guy. And I do not believe that we can tinker with this at this point. Like there is a free market in the NFL for a reason, because having to manage your contracts like this is a thing that every team has to go through. And just because a couple of owners have botched it and not gotten it right and felt like, well, Daniel Jones isn't worth $40 million, then don't pay Daniel Jones $40 million, and whatever the market sets a quarterback to be worth is what a quarterback is worth at the end of the day. If Daniel Jones is worth 40, then Joe Burrow's probably worth 50. But eventually over time, I think that this starts to correct itself like any market generally does. Like, what did we just see from running backs 2 years ago or whatever? Is that running backs started getting paid until the rest of the league looked around and said, why are we paying running backs? They really don't matter that much. And we can replace them with a 4th round draft pick and pay the guy $800K. And everybody said, yeah, you're right, we can do that. And they stopped paying running backs. I think we'll hit a point eventually with the quarterback market where unless you are the
see, this is where you actually went the opposite of my argument, because
really?
The running backs, let me interject, I won't go fully, but
sure.
The concept that you just said is kind of counterintuitive, because the owners working against each other because they want to win, right? There's competition.
Sure.
But also all of the owners are on the same team, because eventually the owners will get into similar problems that other owners are in. And then there's the protection of the player. How much hoopla did we hear when running back salaries were nothing, right? When they weren't getting paid and they were getting cut. And then, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey, and there will always be outliers, but it's a very small percentage of that position. And where's all the money going? The justification is we've got to take from Peter to pay Paul, but Paul is the quarterback and Peter is on the same team. And Paul hands off to Peter sometimes, but Peter is not going to be here for long because he doesn't make any money. He's not valuable. And I think the NFL Players Association looked at that and said, look, we don't love this. We've got to protect all of our players, our offensive linemen, our right guards, our running backs. But the owners are saying the structure of this, the most important position in team sport is the quarterback. I'm going to take from Peter, AKA the running back, and I'm going to pay Paul because he's Patrick Mahomes, and that's who's going to win the Super Bowl.
So, but I guess where do you think this conversation is then coming from? Because what we just read was that this is a conversation being kind of sparked by owners. Like, owners are having this conversation. I think that is like something, if it's like the NFLPA,
because the agents have moved the market. It's a very good question, but the agents have moved the market because Daniel Jones, as you said, gets X, and then that's compared to Joe Burrow, and then that's compared to
Daniel
Trevor
Jones
Lawrence.
Getting a contract makes everybody that's better than Daniel Jones need to get more.
Right.
But my problem is, like, the owners put themselves in that spot by giving it out to then move the market up there. And I do think we will see, like, you will watch a guy like Daniel Jones's contract completely tank where the New York Giants are as a franchise and be a problem for them moving forward. And now the next time there's a guy like Daniel Jones, he's not getting paid what Daniel Jones got paid, because a lot of other teams are learning from, like, I don't think owners are – sorry, go ahead.
Who? I mean, I think you could think of one possible example in my mind, and that's Tua.
Well, so here's an example of what I think is coming, because I think it's going to be the most fun quarterback contract conversations are always awesome. I don't think there's going to be one more fun than when Brock Purdy needs to get paid by the 49ers, because Brock Purdy's the guy that everybody debates. Is he the MVP or is he a system quarterback? And, it's like everybody's on one end of this, like, pretty serious scale. And I think it's going to be interesting when he comes and hits free agency and you look at his production and you look at the wins and you look at the Super Bowl appearances and you say, well, obviously Brock Purdy needs to get paid more than Daniel Jones. And yet the San Francisco 49ers have shown us with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they've shown us before that they're okay replacing the quarterback in the system and showing you that one guy is not greater than Kyle Shanahan's system in the offense and what they do as an organization as a whole. I think that one will be fun. And I think that'll be an example of when, like,
that's also overshadowed by all the draft picks they gave up for Trey Lance. So let's not forget the bad decision that the 49ers made, that they leveraged their entire franchise to go all the way up in the draft to draft a top 3 quarterback that was not a good quarterback, right? But everybody forgets about that because they supplemented very, very well with that.
Yeah.
My pushback is that you said that this will change. This will force change of the owners. But Sam, we haven't seen that. If Tua wins a playoff game this year, the Dolphins are going to have to pay him Trevor Lawrence type money.
But that's what I'm asking though, is like have to is so relative to me. Like, and I agree with you. It's such an interesting thing because one of my hot takes at the time, which has been proven right over the years, is that like the Ryan Tannehill run in 2019 was like a really bad thing for the Titans. One of the worst things to happen to the Titans long term, because it put them in a spot where you were like, this guy just played MVP caliber football for half a season and got us into the playoffs. And what do we do now? We have to pay him because we just went to the AFC Championship game. But that Ryan Tannehill contract, I think, proved to not be great for the Titans year over year as he aged. And you put yourself in a spot where maybe it was best to reset on a younger contract. And I just think that, maybe Miami does feel like, well, we have to pay Tua, but maybe you don't. Like, maybe the same way that teams start to view running backs as far as you are relatively replaceable in the system and we can use a draft pick on you, is how some teams will start to view quarterback. Is that if we have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and a great offense, like, not that,
but they're not,
and maybe that any
they're not viewing that. Their actions tell us that they're not.
Not yet. But it, like, this happens enough.
So, but when is an example, Sam, that they've gotten, like, the Tua thing could happen, but it also couldn't. But when's an example where a guy like that is in a contract year, all the writing is on the wall, and then they let him go?
I mean, Minnesota just did it with Kirk Cousins. They just didn't pay Kirk Cousins, and they went
because they had already done it. They had already committed the $100 million guaranteed, or $90 million. So, like, that, what I'm talking about is, that doesn't count because they already made.
You're talking about somebody paying their own guy. Yeah,
they drafted him. They go through the rigors of what it is, and Justin Fields was traded, right? But there was never a decision of like, what should we pay him or should we not?
I don't know if we ever got to that discussion with the Justin Fields, but I do think it factored into the Bears' decision. This idea,
the number one draft pick factored into it.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe if they don't have
the reason.
And if they don't have number one, it might be a completely different discussion, obviously, because you saw Caleb Williams and you're like, oh, no, duh. But I do think, there's a guy like Justin Fields that you would look at in a normal context and say, you don't suck, but you're not amazing. And, I can't pay you like you're amazing if you're not amazing. And, like, is it easier to just reset, try our chances in the quarterback lottery again and hope we get a stud versus paying and locking ourselves into mediocrity? Like, I think, and I do think over time, you can start to see teams potentially go the other direction. Like I said,
but there's an alternative, Sam. Like, that's a situation where they had a clear-cut alternative. The discussion that we're in is you go through a contract, your quarterback is good, average, but not great, and could be even bad, like Bortles and like Jones and even Trevor Lawrence possibly has not shown. But there is no alternative. Right? Like, you are sitting there saying that some teams will now just say, all right, bye-bye. I'm going to go in the draft. The Jags can't do that.
I mean, Baker Mayfield is not a great example because they paid a quarterback instead of Baker Mayfield instead. But
and that was a unique situation because he was
the alternative.
He was a free agent. I guess the Browns did trade for the rights.
The alternative is just not paying the contract and taking your chances on a different guy. And I will give you.
There is no different guy. It depends on where you are in the draft. That's why the Bears made a lot of sense. But if your guy is mediocre, that's what I'm saying. If you're on the cusp of paying him $100+ million, or if you're on the cusp of cutting him, you're drafting in the mid round.
Right. But this is where, but Zach, that's my thing. So far up to this point in NFL history, teams have started to say, we have a guy that we feel like could be the guy, these Daniel Jones type of guys who came off a career year before he actually got paid. And teams have started to say, do we look for a new quarterback? Do we pay the guy that we currently have? And they've tended to pay the guy they currently have and hope that he turns into the star. But as we start to see some of those mid-tier guys that you mentioned turn into quarterbacks that are not worth their contract, and as we start to see these contracts go up and up, I do think we will hit a point where it has to correct itself. And you will start to say, this dude who's middle of the road is not worth paying a chunk of money that goes against our salary cap and prohibits us from building around the same player. We are better off taking a chance on another rookie quarterback on a rookie deal and using that money to build a roster around him. And if that rookie doesn't work, we can try again with a new rookie and a new rookie and a new rookie. And I think teams are going to start going in that direction because at the end of the day, any quarterback contract and the market for the quarterbacks getting to this point is on the owners. This is a free market. You can pay guys whatever you want to pay them. And it's the fact that they've all agreed that Daniel Jones is worth $40 million a year because they gave him that contract, that now you're starting to see the number just get pushed higher and higher. You give a bad deal to a bad quarterback like Daniel Jones, every quarterback that's better than Daniel Jones is obviously going to point to that and say, well, if Jones gets that, I have to get this figure that's substantially higher than his. And you can't really avoid that. I don't think you can.
I think that's what a quarterback salary cap will do.
But you can't, as the owners, be like, well, we really messed this up and started giving out bad deals. So let's just put a cap. Let's put a rule in place so that we can't up anymore. I don't think that makes sense.
Well, no, I'm the logic of this is you're moving all of the money and how we judge a certain position into a separate funnel, right? So because, and this was, I think this all started the rumors. It was it was a Bleacher Report article. This is wild. The top 11 contracts in the NFL based on total money belong to quarterbacks.
That makes
the top
sense to
16
me. I think
NFL
it should be that way.
Well, the top 16 NFL contracts on average annual salary, all quarterbacks. The top 12 contracts in terms of guaranteed money, all quarterbacks. So when you look at those type of guys, so I'll just go through the top 11. Patrick Mahomes, which is no question. Trevor Lawrence is questionable. Joe Burrow is not questionable. Justin Herbert, I think he's in the more Burrow Mahomes part. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, I would question. Kyler Murray, I would question. Deshaun Watson, I would question. And then you've got Jared Goff at 10 and Kirk Cousins at 11. You've got more guys that's 6 to 5, and that may be arguable, so I won't get into that. But you've got guys like Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson versus more of the guys that we feel comfortable about, but they're in the same group because they're viewed on a bigger scale instead of a salary cap that is just individualized, where you in your right mind, and we all in our right mind, would say Kyler Murray at 8 should be not even close to Josh Allen at 6. That doesn't make any sense. That is buffoonery. And so what I want to do, and this is why I'm for this, is let's reset like we did with Sam Bradford and Cam Newton. And we weren't paying those guys. I mean, I think earlier in the chat, somebody mentioned it. it was like a $78 million contract to Sam Bradford, and 50 of it was guaranteed. It was getting out of hand. I think Trevor Lawrence's contract, which is now $275 million, and the annual salary is $55 million, that's getting out of hand.
I mean,
so how do we combat that? Us not doing anything and just making the owners, because owners fight with agents, and agents fight for their players. If you reset the market with a quarterback salary cap, we can kind of get back to basics where Kyler Murray shouldn't be sniffing Josh Allen's contract's jock. It shouldn't be close.
I think the only way to do that in a way that makes sense is to have that be natural. Like, you can't let the people who screwed up change the rules. Change the rules because all of a sudden they're not happy with their own mistakes. Like,
it goes back to the running back conversation. That's why it's justified. We're going to take this money, allocate it towards the players that are actually valuable, and then we're going to reinvest. We're going to reinvest it back into the Players Association players, so more people get paid and all boats rise together.
I can appreciate that, and I think it's smart football to do that and make sure that you're building a roster around your quarterback and being able to pay the other players. I think it makes sense for everybody else in the league to have a quarterback salary cap because that means more money for them to go around. I don't think it makes necessarily sense for teams because anybody would tell you, quarterback is the most important position both on the field and off the field in terms of revenue. And like, I look at kind of a cross sport example of this that I do think makes sense is look at baseball and the contracts that are given out in baseball, specifically to international players. There are guys who have never stepped foot in the United States of America, never played one day of professional sports. They've never seen a major league pitch. And they went from being guys that would get $100K and a citizenship in the United States and would come over here to guys that are getting $100 million in a signing bonus before they've stepped foot on the U.S. soil. And the reason that it has gotten to that point is because teams started seeing that all of these stars were coming from the Dominican and coming from Cuba or even coming from Japan. And they were saying, we want some of that pie. And you know what else has happened? Teams have given out $50-60 million of guaranteed contracts to players that end up not playing in the major leagues. And all of a sudden you've given $60 million to a guy that just didn't work out. And so now there is kind of a natural checks and balances for major league teams that are making these offers to players and saying, but that is ultimately what the free market is I'm trying to get a good deal for my franchise long-term if I lock you up for $60 million over 10 years and you become a megastar, I'm going to profit off of that. The spin zone is you get hurt, you don't work out, you're not as good as I think you might be, and I'm stuck with a bad contract. And you have to weigh that thing. Like, I don't think you as owners can continually make this mistake where you're overpaying guys for their value. And then instead of saying, let's correct and not give out those contracts anymore, just say, let's just make it a rule so that now none of us are susceptible to actually screwing up. Like, that's corrupt economics in like a lot of ways. So that's why I can't get on board with it. I think there is a natural correction to it if you're an owner who is afraid of paying the wrong quarterback.
But if it's set up correctly, I want to get to a couple of different comments that I had starred. Jamie earlier on in the show says the quarterback pay and current cap are unsustainable. So now, look, it's hard to even think about.
I would have to think about that, like the ratio of a quarterback, like how much that has increased compared to the salary cap. I don't know what that,
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, if it's done the right way, and we don't know the current trajectory, we also have this NFL Sunday Ticket trial going on that could cost the league billions and billions of dollars,
Essentially what the proposal that makes sense here, it would be something that mirrors the NBA, which is there is a max contract in the NBA that you can sign, and that max contract increases every year depending on the overall salary cap of the league, and it's a percentage of the league.
It's easier to do that with 12 players on a team that historically the guy on the bench is not going to tear his ACL, or the guy on the bench could tear his ACL in the NFL because more people play and more opportunity to get hurt, right? So like, it's tough. I think conceptually I understand what you're saying is the max deal benefits the team that actually drafts that player, right?
Yeah, and it's a way for like contracts to consistently go up as the league generates more revenue without paying LeBron James $200 million and being like, you're the entire team. Everybody else is making like league minimum,
Well, and what turned the league upside down? It was Tom Brady late in his career not taking the max deals. When he was signing those individual contracts, he was like the 12th highest paid quarterback because Tom Brady likes winning over money. And, now I don't know if hindsight 2020 with the crypto thing, I don't know.
Oh, well, sure. But also like Tom Brady was in a unique spot that he could do that as well because he had made his money, and two, like Tom Brady was going to make $50 million a year in endorsements in his TB12 brand, where he didn't need the salary.
Right. He's already made his brand. MB brings up this. It says, Zach, it's called ownership collusion. Anytime you get some conspiracy, I'm always going to, at least let's call it a conspiracy. But MB's calling for ownership collusion. If the New York Giants don't pay Daniel Jones, the rest of the owners have to agree not to pay him either. Not necessarily. I think that you've seen, some go rogue, few do go rogue, right?
This is why everybody was pissed at the Browns, because they went rogue and gave out more guaranteed money, and they were all like, hey, we don't want to do that. We said we weren't going to do all of that for quarterbacks moving forward.
But the Browns got so desperate because they were a desperate franchise. They'd go through all those quarterbacks, the 20 different quarterbacks. They'd gotten number 1 picks and selected Baker Mayfield, and it didn't work. So they're literally just throwing spaghetti at the wall at their quarterback room for 2+ decades. And finally, they just said, there's a guy who's a free agent on the market that has had some trouble. We don't believe that it's that much trouble, and we're going to pay him.
But like ultimately, that is like what I think other teams should look at as an example of, the Browns got desperate. The Browns did something that was unprecedented. They gave out a contract that was bigger than any other team was willing to. And you as an organization could look at the Browns and say, hey, I don't like that. I don't want to have to do that for my guy. But if you don't want to do that for your guy, you can always just say no. And the crazy thing is that if all of the owners are on the same page and a guy is not worth a certain contract, the guy's not going to get that contract. He won't get paid that, and that number will come down. And if he does get paid that number by somebody and he does get crazy amounts of guaranteed money and you don't believe that it's worth it, chances are it's going to hurt that franchise in the long run, kind of like it has the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson. Like, they are absolutely wishing that they didn't have that Deshaun Watson contract right now with all of that guaranteed money, because it's handicapped them from actually going to a Super Bowl contender with a really good roster around him right now. So, I think that ultimately is the question, is if you're looking at your quarterback saying, I don't think you're worth the figure that the league is saying you're worth, you always have the option to say no and try your hand in another way. And I don't like the idea. I think that's a fun wrinkle in sports, is this idea that, you weighing the value of contracts to potentially avoid screwing up your franchise. You pay the wrong quarterback, you put yourself in a really bad spot and can't build around him. And I think it's something every team has to navigate. And I don't want to put something in place that just gives teams an easy out where they don't have to deal with this problem anymore and they can bail themselves out from their own mistakes. I think it also sets a pretty bad precedent for what else they're able to do and how they're it's good for everybody. It will
have to be agreed upon by the NFL Players Association. So they're not just going rogue and saying, look, we're going to put this in place. It has to be voted on, especially, but this is, the owners are, they are accruing the most risk because now they're making the most money. The risk is worked out, but they are fronting the dollars. They are writing the checks.
Sure.
They are paying players guaranteed money not to play at times because of contracts, right? So the general managers, Rand Carthon, is spending other people's money. That's just how the situation works. So they will always have power and say, but there are checks and balances to make sure that it is voted upon. There is a democracy within it. I heard a lot of communist and socialistic views in the chat and sitting there talking about politics. There are rules and regulations and bells and whistles on what this represents and rule changes they don't always get passed, right? So I actually do think this is one that's trending in the direction. If it does get more legs,
Oh,
this
man,
is kind of the start of the rumor.
it's super interesting too, because like we've mentioned here, it helps literally every single NFL player besides quarterbacks. And yet quarterbacks are kind of the most important pocket of player. And so like the NFLPA, if they had to come together and vote on this, I wonder where the union would kind of fall. This is really bad for QBs. Like capping what a player is able to make is not
But
something that the players associations are ever in the business of doing. But if you believe it can spread the wealth to everybody else in the league,
who has
I
the
don't
most
know.
opportunity to make more money off the field?
True. No, absolutely.
That's
Right.
where I think it's justified and if quarterbacks, look, the agents won't like this, or maybe the agents will. It just depends on how it will be structured, because now there's more opportunity elsewhere and it expands the reach of the NFL player. That's why I like this idea. It's going to have to take the quarterbacks to sacrifice, and the Daniel Joneses and the Matt Flynn's and the Trevor Lawrences of the world will not get paid as much as they would have, but they're not worth as much as they've gotten paid. So that's where it's fundamentally incorrect. That's why I like this idea. And if they can get this thing together, I think it makes a lot of sense. I do want to shift to Will Levis and the impact that it has with him. And that's what we're going to go to next. Going to compare the contract that Trevor Lawrence just signed in the last 10 or so days versus, and Will Levis is in a unique situation himself because he's not a first round pick, right?
Yeah.
So we'll compare that. But first, Sam, tell everybody about the Bone and Joint Institute.
The Bone and Joint Institute is the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Whenever you get hurt in life, you have to know who to trust, and you don't want to fumble on your recovery. You can go to the Bone and Joint Institute, located out there in Franklin, with a state-of-the-art rehab facility for all of your needs to get you back healthy and recovered. They've got everything all over under one roof. So it's a one-stop shop, and you don't have to drive all over Middle Tennessee to go to your different appointments. Clinic, rehab, imaging, surgery, testing, you name it, they've got it at the Bone and Joint Institute. So go and visit them, located in Franklin, right off the highway. Don't have to deal with complicated way of getting there, deal with Nashville traffic. It's right there off the highway. Schedule your appointment with our friends at the Bone and Joint Institute at boneandjointtn.org.
A to Z Sports, we are powered by BetMGM. You can see it right there at the bottom of the screen, right up top on the lid. Bonus code ATOZ Sports right there. They are the king of the sports books. What Sam mentioned this, you're going to have 2 TVs tonight because you got college baseball and the final to the Tennessee Volunteers versus the Texas A&M Aggies in a Game 3 winner-take-all national championship game versus Game 7 winner-take-all Stanley Cup with the Panthers versus the Oilers. So a lot of sports action on a Monday night. We're all here for it. You can be all here for it by downloading the app in your Apple or Android app store. Use the bonus code ATOZ Sports. All right, Sam, let's get to Will Levis and Trevor Lawrence. I'll let you kind of go through some of the contract differential. There's a discrepancy in it.
Yeah, I mean, Will Levis, Trevor Lawrence, you see Will Levis's deal. You mentioned the unique situation that he's in. Not a first-round pick. Of course, that means his salary is going to be lower with the base salary. Like last year, $750,000. This year, it's still under $1 million. And the biggest thing is probably the fact that he becomes an unrestricted free agent after year 4. You don't have the 5th-year option on a non-first-round pick quarterback. And so the Titans will probably have to figure out whether or not they're paying Will Levis after the 2025 season. They do not have all that long to figure out whether or not this is the guy, which kind of goes back into a conversation Austin and I had last week about the Titans offseason moves and, putting themselves in a position to get their answers. But the Trevor Lawrence deal is ridiculously backloaded. You see not a ton of big cap figures for Trevor Lawrence in 2024 to 2028, putting himself in a position where, hey, Jacksonville can build around their quarterback and keep him locked up. But 2029, the base salary for Trevor Lawrence, $50 million. 2030, $53 million. There are a lot of guarantees in his deal. 5 years, $202 million is the first potential out for Lawrence with the Jags. And a lot of that was in a signing bonus as well, which is then prorated over many years.
Yeah. Guaranteed at sign $142 million.
So big difference. And this is ultimately what, sparks this conversation is a guy like Will Levis.
That's wrong, Sam. That makes no logical sense.
Maybe Will Levis is still right here, right? And like we're still trying to figure out exactly what he is. And maybe Trevor Lawrence is here, but between here and here is not $200 million. Like it is not $50 million a year to $900,000 a year. But the gap between a quarterback that gets paid and doesn't get paid right now is incredibly significant. Here's the thing, though, is how does that impact the AFC South if the Jaguars have a quarterback that they pay and can't spend as much money on the rest of their roster? If it's not the right guy, it handcuffs you for very, very long. And teams that have those rookie deals are teams like the Texans or the Titans who can have the big off seasons and build around those quarterbacks and, bring in a lot of supplemental players. And so is there a benefit to not having that big $50 million
That's the
contract?
thing with Levis, right? It shortened the window because you don't have the traditional first-round quarterback draft pick. So you got to make your decision on a very small sample size.
Yeah.
And that sample size. So now, but Sam, let's look at this in both glass half full and glass half empty. Glass half empty is just like what I said. Oh, man, he's not a first-round pick. We got to make our decision. We don't know if he's the guy. Now we're going to have to pay him a bunch of money. But if the franchise and the statistics and the quarterback, we all kind of feel we still don't know yet, maybe you can get an advantageous deal for the quarterback. It's still going to be a lot of money, but maybe you sign him to, instead of the 5 and the 10 and the 7-year contract, now you're really paying him maybe for 4 years with a potential out, and maybe you kind of supplement your risk. And that could be the case for the Titans. Now, if Will Levis wins the AFC South and wins 14 games this year and is just electric, they're going to have to pay him because you've seen it, right? And you're going to probably lock him in for a longer period of time. The only luxuries that happen in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson was a unique bird because he was hurt, right? The fear was, man, we don't want to give him the big money because he hadn't been on the field in 2 straight seasons, and it cost them the playoffs. Now, he's had 2 MVP campaigns, so he has shown that maybe he is worth the money. But Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, you don't have a problem paying those guys long-term deals.
Yeah.
The problem is with the majority of the NFL, the Deshaun Watsons, the Jalen Hurts even. Jalen Hurts may not be a good signing when they look back at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the same thing with like Brock Purdy, right? It's like, is this guy good, or is the team around him so good that any number of average NFL quarterbacks could thrive in the system? And, here's the thing though, that I want to know your thoughts on, as somebody who's kind of been leaning like you think this is a good idea. The problem that I do kind of have with this is, let's say we create a salary cap for quarterbacks. And so now we have a max contract of what a quarterback can potentially make on a deal. Like there is a maximum salary that you can pay your quarterback. The question then becomes, which quarterback is worth the max salary? Which guys are worth that figure? And as we've seen, teams are very willing to dole out money to quarterbacks. And so, Josh Allen, max guy, Patrick Mahomes, max guy. But are we okay with a world where the Josh Allens, Patrick Mahomes, and the elite quarterbacks in the NFL are making the exact same amount of money as these middle of the road quarterbacks without the opportunity to make any more? Where Daniel Jones gets paid the exact same amount as Patrick Mahomes, and there's nothing that Patrick Mahomes could do to get paid more money, because what it does do is give even more power. Like, the number one thing that creates a successful franchise in the NFL is getting the right quarterback. And if you can draft a stud quarterback and you put your team to have a franchise QB, you've set yourself up for a lot of success over a decade. Those teams become even more empowered because not only do you have the elite quarterback in the league, you have the elite quarterback in the league at a cheaper rate than you previously would have had them. Like, you're paying the same amount.
There has to be sacrifice. There has to be give and take, Sam, right? The deal does not just work for everyone.
But it becomes that, like, you're almost forcing that Tom Brady effect where Tom Brady takes the cheaper contract so that it was great for the Bucs. It was great for the Bucs when they did that. It was really bad for the rest of the league to have a team have Tom Brady and also be able to spend whatever money they want in free agency because everybody wants to play with Tom Brady and Tom's not getting paid anything. Like, it became very hard to beat the Bucs versus a team like the Eagles that pays their quarterback and now has some checks and balances where the rest of the roster is going to take a hit and take a sacrifice because you paid the quarterback. If we set up a salary cap for quarterbacks where Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and the elite QBs are getting paid the exact same amount as the average to good QBs, the teams that already have the benefit of an elite quarterback are benefit even more by having more money to spend on the rest of their roster. You're giving them more power.
That's, I believe, and we don't know how this is going to be set up, but Sam, that is going to be the give that the owners would do. If a quarterback had a salary, if the owners had signed a contract to a quarterback that is an exclusive salary like Patrick Mahomes' contract, I believe if they redid this, they would give the owners an opportunity to redo their quarterback's contract. And if they so choose.
Sure.
So now Patrick Mahomes could reset the market and the owners would have to give that money to say, all right, we're going to restructure this salary cap for the good and the great of the future, but I'm going to have to take one on the chin and repay Patrick Mahomes. And instead of, let's see, paying him, however many guaranteed now, instead of his annual average salary is $45 million, probably going to be closer to $60 million.
Yeah. Like, for me, correct. But it's more about like the parity of the league as a whole and the competition level in the league as a whole. Because there's a lot of teams right now that have this feeling, fan bases that have this feeling, that nothing matters until we get the quarterback. Nothing matters unless you get the quarterback. And in general, that tends to be the case, right? The elite quarterbacks are the ones that win Super Bowls, are the ones that make the playoffs, are the ones that are on contending rosters. That's generally the case in general. But I do think it's a fun nuance to the league that you can have a team like the 49ers, get Mr. Irrelevant, plug him into a system, spend money on the supporting cast around him, and build a Super Bowl contender that doesn't need the fancy schmancy best quarterback in football to be competitive. And I like the fact that
shows over time that's not consistent.
Sure, but I like the fact, but you can continually do that, right? And there is a path to be a competitive team that can win games without having the best quarterback in the league. I think this quarterback salary cap basically takes out that possibility because now you have given teams that have elite quarterbacks that already have the most power, that are already the most competitive, that already have the little toy that everybody else in the league wants, you give them even more runway by saying your toy is less expensive. I want your toy more than you want your toy. You don't have to even pay top price for it, and I can't outbid you for it because the guy can only make this much. So it becomes weird to me as far as hurting the competitive parity of the league if you're taking quarterbacks and then not letting them into the free market where teams can mess up those contracts.
And I think that's just being overridden by $142 million guaranteed to Trevor Lawrence that should not be guaranteed. That's dumb. That's
they didn't have to give it to him. Though. You don't have to give him $142 million.
But they did because he wouldn't have signed, right? They would have they made the decision, right? I don't know the nuances of their negotiations, but that's where they were as far as the numbers. And so to your point, Sam, they could have walked. The Jags said, but now the Jags, a small market team that notoriously is not a competitor, goes back into the bottom of the barrel, and they worked so hard and lost a lot of games and lost a lot of fan bases, a lot of season ticket holders getting Trevor Lawrence. They're not going to piss him away. That was their decision.
Yeah.
But he's not worth $142 million guaranteed.
You're worth what you
Reset
get paid.
the quarterback
Get
market.
paid.
It's nuanced. That's why there's an issue. And I think
it's interesting. It's super interesting because I do think there are and the fun thing is that it's not necessarily players union versus owners. It's not that cut and dry because there are players that get hurt by this. And every NFL quarterback will, if this becomes a discussion that actually gets legitimate legs, those press conferences with NFL quarterbacks are going to be really fun. The same way that you've got every running back standing there at the podium being like, let my dogs get paid. You're going to have every quarterback up there having to face the music of what do you think about the new rule, knowing that, hey, this is good for all my teammates if I get paid less. And I just think it's a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a caveat there. The running backs were bitching and moaning about $4 to $8 million a year.
Yeah,
the quarterbacks would be bitching and moaning between $40 and $50 million a year. And you can't bitch and moan about $40 and $15 million per year.
Yeah, you're still the highest paid player on the team, and
your moan doesn't hit. I'm sorry.
Sure.
You know?
You're still going to be the highest paid player on the team, and you're like, man, my guys have it rough out here. They're only letting them make $38 million. Like
we can't eat. I'm trying to provide for my family. Okay, pal. Okay, all right.
All right. Well, yeah, it's fun. I do think there's arguments like both ways because it objectively has gotten out of hand. Like the quarterback contracts have gotten way, way, way out of hand. How far do we need to correct to get it back? And can it correct naturally, or do you need to put a structure in place? We'll see. Like all things in sports, right now, it feels a little far-fetched to think that this would actually become a thing and that the owners would actually be able to agree on this. But 2-3 years from now, you might be looking and be like, wow, that seemed like a foreign concept that we could actually get there. And here we are. So that, things develop rather quickly.
You're absolutely right. All right, Sam, I've got a special age game trivia just for you. I think you should be able to get it. The chat notoriously with the group, they will get it. It just will take some time, or it may not take any time. But first, going to tell everybody about Wilson County Hyundai, right down the road, down I-40, exit 236. That's wilsoncountyhyundai.com. You can look online, whether it's the Santa Fe or the Sonata, the Elantra. Your perfect make and model is right there at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Go down and visit Payne Bone. And the folks at Wilson County Hyundai, they'll hook you up with a great deal. All right, Sam, it's time for the age game. Chat, are you ready? Sam, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm curious to see. You said specific to me, so I'm curious to see where you go with this.
Yes, and we've had some grand champions. Let me check real quick. This is what we do on the fly. The age game, we've got 3 two-time champions. So that's who you're chasing. Brock Kraft, John Kavanaugh, and Anthony Malley. Those are our two-time champs. And King Feezy says, lock it in and like the show.
Yeah.
Make sure you lock
more
it in.
More likes on the show. Bump it up. Get positive vibes for me getting back into the age game here. First age game back on the show. So need the likes up.
All right. Here is your age game question, and for all. And this particular person, I don't know if he gained any years and got younger. Maybe found the fountain of youth through all of his testosterone endorsements. How old is Frank Thomas? The big hurt Chicago White Sox great. How old is Frank Thomas? So that is your pan personal, because I know you are a Chicago White Sox type of dude.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Okay, so Frank, last year with the White Sox was 05. Chat's they're a little too high. I can tell you that right now. Frank's last year was 05. I think he played 3 years post White Sox with Toronto and Oakland, maybe 2. Let's say he retired at 39 in 07. maybe close to 40. Close to 40 in 07. I will say that Frank Thomas is 56 years old. Lock it in.
56 years old. That is
Lock
your
it
final
in.
answer?
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
All right. We're going to go to the chat, and we are going to see who got this correct. Cost 66 goes with 47. Stephen King goes 54. Wrong and wrong. Lou Man 59. That is wrong.
This is the one that 60 is too old. He's not 60. I guarantee you that
60.
one.
Anthony goes 57, which
I thought about 57.
Very good guess, but wrong.
Okay.
Nick says 60. That's wrong. Randy says 57. We also know that wrong. A couple of 58s. That's a little too old. 64. Connor is too old.
Yeah,
Billy Jones, 54.
That's too low.
Is incorrect. Steve Jones, 58. 68's wrong. 59. John Doe is wrong. We have a double champion, LC Oliver and Sam Phelan, 56 years old, and he's got that right there.
Let's go.
Wow. Austin is going to be pissed.
Why? Has Austin not been winning?
He is not won. He is not. Since we started our board, we put you on the big board.
You did give me, like, I will say it was tailored to me a little bit here because I saw that, but yeah, I did have this on standby. Embarrassing to wear this in public nowadays, but so I'll take the occasion.
Did you know you figured that out? Had you seen it recently? I mean, again, it's all.
No,
all
I'm just trying to, like, I know Frank I know Frank's career path, and I'm like, I don't think he played to 40. I want to say he retired at 39-ish. And if he was with the Sox at 35, 36, when he was really old, got hurt, played 2 or 3 years after that, then he would have retired in like 07, 08 at like 38, 39. And so I was trying to figure out if I should be at 57 or 56. And I went younger. So it was a kind of a coin flip. Let me make sure I'm actually accurate on that. I want to know. I mean, I guess, yeah. How old was he when he retired then? Let's see.
So,
he did play to 40.
He just turned 56 May 27th. So,
that was close. So but he did 3 years, 3 years after the Sox, Toronto, Oakland, retired in 08 was his last season. And then, yeah.
All right, Sam, let's put you on the big board. You've taken that spot right there to the left that I was saving for Austin. So maybe there's room for two. But LC Oliver down there below, you guys are all chasing Brock, John, and Anthony. But Sam, man, the champion over there. That must feel good.
Yeah, saving the spot for Austin took me. I'm probably going to text him right now after we end the show here. And just
as a guest appearance. Actually, you know what? Don't. I don't know if he's watched the show. Don't.
Yeah, because I'm not on Mondays. So Austin's
next
just going to
Monday. Let's just see how he reacts.
Yeah, every week he's going to have to come in and try and find a spot that doesn't exist anymore on the leaderboard because
it's hard. So, hey, LC, congratulations. Sam, congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, great show on a Monday morning, getting this week up and raring and ready to go. We thank you to the chat. Sam, it was great to see you and have a good conversation as we roll on through the rest of the offseason. Keep it locked in and make sure you like the show before you go. Subscribe to the channel. We've got you covered all week long with Jack Gentry, with Sam Phelan. Austin will return later in the week. So have a great Monday morning, and we will see you bright and early on a Tuesday morning. Adios.
Peace.